Denise León, and she's a professor of Spanish American literature and communication theory. But I would say that she is mainly a poet, and she has published, a long list of very important poetry books. But something that I would like to highlight is that many of her poems are written originally in Ladino. So she's also a very important voice from her poetry to do what we can about the preservation of Ladino. Let's give a huge applause to Denise León.
Thank you.
One of the topics in our last event was how these concepts of or terms, when applied in general, can give us really a very poor understanding of our experience as human beings. I think if we focus on individual stories, it's going to be better for us to understand the complexities of those experiences. And that is what we are going to do right now, because Rachel and Denise are going to talk exactly about their own personal and individual experiences. For us, it's going to be very important to see this contrast and at the same time, a complementarity between them. We are going to start with question number one for Rachel first, and then for Denise. The first question is about your experience with Ladino when you were a little child, and growing up in Izmir. We know that you are a native speaker of Ladino. How was your experience?
I will speak in more detail later about this, but it was a very natural thing. I was born into a Ladino-speaking world, really, because my neighborhood was mostly composed of Jewish people. The greengrocer, the grocer, the people that went by selling things, most of them were Jewish, and the Jewish language in my city was what we called Espanol. And in fact, I didn't know the term Sephardic really until I came to America, and people had never heard of us, that we existed even. And I will talk more about this, but I have told the story so many times that people didn't believe that I could be Jewish because I didn't know Yiddish and all that kind of stuff, or had never seen gefilte fish in my life. And so I actually wrote my father and I said, why don't they know anything about us? What should I tell them besides, yeah, I'm a Jew from Turkey? They said, tell them that you are Sephardic. That's what I knew. That's when I decided, I guess that's what I am. And then I learned more from then on what it meant. Otherwise, my first question at home as a child, maybe I should say my first history lesson, was when I said to my father, ¿de qué hablamos en español? Why do we speak Spanish? What have we got to do with Spain? And she said, well, he said, well, our ancestors came from Spain. And I accepted that. That was my first lesson.
Can you tell us a little bit about your education in Turkey?
Yes. I attended a Jewish elementary school in which the first 4 grades, which was almost across the street from our house, definitely across the street from the synagogue, called Bene Berit. Everybody was Jewish except the Turkish, that is Muslim Turkish. There in Turkey, when we said Turkish, it meant non-Jewish Turks, Muslims. So we had a couple of Turkish teachers, but other than that, everybody was Jewish. So we played in the courtyard outside of class in Ladino. We fought, we quarreled in Ladino. We did everything that children do in Spanish in the school. Only in the classroom, the instruction was in Turkish. And our principal was Jewish. He used to give sermons in the synagogue in Ladino. By the way, his notes for his sermons were written in soletreo, in this Hebrew cursive writing, and they were bought, we learned later, by Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, Ohio. How they got there, we don't know.
And how was your own experience in the process of learning Turkish?
Oh, we had Turkish neighbors, and to whom we could, I was born and raised until I left in the same house. And later on, you'll see a picture so you can sort of imagine where this was. So across the street was this very interesting family that lived on the top floor of the 2-story house. They were there when I was born, it seems, so they liked me a lot as a baby, as a child. So my mother used to send me there to keep me when she was too busy with whatever housework she had to do. So they would talk to me in Turkish. So I learned Turkish early on, from the neighbors, because it was mixed. We had Turkish shopkeepers also, who, that I later on, at 5, 6 years old, I had to go buy some milk or something from somewhere where I had to speak Turkish. So I did know Turkish when I started the Jewish school also. Then, of course, after 4th grade, my mother took me out up there and put me in a Turkish public school where everything was Turkish. I'll talk more about that later.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, now, Denise, we know that your experience is very different from the experience of Rachel. Tell us about your own experience, please.
As you may know by now, I'm from Argentina, so I wasn't raised and born in a Ladino environment. But while I was growing up, I noticed that in my family, they use some words and some expressions that if I repeat them to other people, nobody would understand me. For example, if I say, anoche cenamos cusures, last night we dinner leftovers, they wouldn't understand me. Or if I say, la sopa está enxaguada, soup, I don't know the word in English for enxaguada. I don't know, it's...
Watery.
Okay, so nobody would understand what I'm saying.
But where did you learn them?
I learned it from my grandmother. My grandmother, she was from Smir, the same city where Rachel was born and raised, and she always speak Ladino with us. And we used to think that she was wrong. She speak a bad Spanish, and we laughed of her and made her jokes about the way she talks. But when I grow up, I start to understand that she was speaking another language, and that language was Ladino. And I used to think it was only in my family. It was a family thing. I didn't know there were lots of people that also speak like my grandmother. So it was very surprising to me when I find out that lots and lots of people speak Ladino. My grandmother says Judesmo or Judío. Ladino also, but never Judeo-Español. She never used that word.
That was an academic term.
Yes, she used Judesmo, Judío. And, well, when I was in college, I began to get interested in the language and in the culture, and then I found out about the huge Sephardic world. And for me, the Ladino has this sound and this music that is very familiar to me. And that's why I try to write in Ladino, because it sounds like family to me.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about the Jewish community in Tucumán?
Yes, that's very interesting, because the 99% of Sephardic Jews in Tucumán are from Izmir. So it's they speak the same kind of Ladino, because, as you know, are many varieties, depends on the place. It's not the same, the Ladino that speak, for example, Miriam, that is from Bulgaria. It's different from the variety of Izmir, but in Tucumán, the whole community, or most of the community, is Izmirli, so they speak the same variety. And the immigration for the Sephardic Jews in Argentina is very different from the Ashkenazi Jews, because the Ashkenazi immigration, they came in groups, and they went to colonies, and they live like agricultures, because they supposed to live the same way they do in the Bible, related to the earth. And the Sephardic Jews came to the cities, not to the countryside. It's una inmigración urbana, mainly in the cities, and they didn't come in groups. The men, most of them were men, because they were hiding from the army in Turkey, so they migrate, and after they start to bring their family with them, send tickets and bring the family. So the immigration was really different. And Tucumán has a strong community of Sephardic people, but we are always less than the Ashkenazi people. Always, we are a smaller group.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Going back to you, Rachel, let's talk about the challenges of Ladino nowadays. We know that in your experience, you really are at the forefront of this, of the activities that are trying to support the surviving of Ladino. How do you see the situation of Ladino right now?
In almost every country, Hector, the local language has taken over. In other words, first let me explain that the grandparents of Denise and others, and including the Sephardic Jews that came up here to the United States or to Mexico, most of them came in the early 1900s, when the Ottoman Empire was involved in wars and trying to escape from the army meant that you wanted to stay alive, because hardly anybody came back from those wars. So, so that's a person. my situation, I was one of the first people to ever leave Turkey since then, since those, let's say 1924 was the cutoff line, as you know, for immigration. Since then, I was one of the first people to leave again, because the Sephardic Jews that you'll find anywhere in the United States or in any of the New World, let's say, most of them have come in those early 20th century years. What was your original question?
The challenges
of
Ladino.
Yes. So now, in those days, that was still the Ottoman Empire in what is now Turkey. The Turkish Republic was formed in 1923. And after that, all citizens got equal rights and we could go to Turkish schools. So, but it took some time for everybody to start going to Turkish schools. But not just Turkish schools, there were also foreign schools like the American school that I attended that taught other languages. There was an Italian school, there were Catholic schools, and so on. But slowly, Turkish became the language. My parents, my mother hardly knew Turkish because she knew enough to ask for a kilo of potatoes or something, but not very well. My father knew the language very well, but the moment he would open his mouth, you would know he was a Jew. He had an accent. I don't know if you would call it a Spanish accent, but it was a Ladino accent that everybody had. So to make the long story short, today, Turkish Jews speak Turkish, French Jews speak French, American Jews, meaning Sephardic Jews, speak English, and so on. So, but everybody has a memory of their grandparents. A couple of years ago, they made a movie in Turkish called Las Últimas Palabras, which means the last words, concentrating on the young Jewish people left. It was a short documentary, and what they remember of Ladino. And it has to do with their grandmothers calling them "Ven aquí mi alma," or loving terms, or names of foods, for example, bamia con arroz, tomates reinados, whatever their food was at home that was still in Spanish names. So the language is absolutely disappearing. And the youngest, I was in Turkey just last March, and in my city, the youngest person who knows the language was 52 years old. The others, they'll tell you, I don't understand anything. It seemed incomprehensible to me. How can they not understand it even? When it was such a vibrant Ladino-speaking community, and now there are young people in my family who are telling me, I don't understand anything. So, and in the United States, the same thing. That I know, but in the United States, there's a group of people who have memories and have now, especially since the pandemic, we have had courses in Ladino, and they have come back with pleasant memories of their grandparents and so on who spoke the language, and they want to remember it and keep it alive in themselves, not necessarily to pass it on to their grandchildren.
Can you talk a little bit more about your activity as an educator of Ladino?
Well, most recently, I gave some courses via the internet for the Sephardic Brotherhood, which is an organization based in New York City. I have, as maybe you mentioned, I don't remember, in 1999, I formed an online correspondence group in Ladino, which, and that's 1999, 24 years going on. We have 1,500 members who write or just read whoever is writing. Somebody writes, it's called Ladino Comunità, and it is on a website called, or I don't know if you call it a server, I don't know what you call it, groups.io. And you go groups.io/Ladino Comunità. And what happens is each person, you can only write in Ladino. Each person writes a message. It could be anything, a memory or a current situation or anything. And mainly I, but I also have help of moderators. Like right now I'm here, I'm not at home. There are a couple of other moderators who make the necessary corrections, because not everything is perfect, and then approves it, and then it goes to all the members. And then people can answer and so on. So that is one of the things that I'm always busy with every day. But we have so many more activities that we have weekly encuentros de Alhad, we call them. Alhad is our word for Domingo, for Sunday, because of the connotation. This is not something we invented. Our ancestors in Spain used to use it among themselves, not when they spoke to a Christian, but, Al-Had is the first day from Arabic, so it's a translation of Yom Rishon in Hebrew, really. So we have these Encuentros del Had on Sunday, where it's like a talk show, where we have a host and a guest, and of note, of some kind, who speaks Ladino. Sometimes not perfectly, but we have it every weekend. It started when the pandemic started. This friend of mine in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, Liliana Benveniste, asked me, what do you think of starting this? And I said, oh, that's a great idea. And so the first one was in July of 2020, and we're still having them. There's one happening tomorrow, which I won't be able to watch live, but they're also being recorded and available for eternity.
That's great. That's great. That's great, Rachel. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, Denise, you said in your previous intervention that there is something in Ladino about the sounds of Ladino that you really connect to. Is that for you the way to keep alive Ladino, writing poetry?
I don't know if I'm doing that. I'm not sure how I'm going to explain this in English. I think that languages are alive. They are alive. You can control them or decide things about them, because languages speak through you. You don't speak the languages, they speak through you. So it's very hard to know what's going to happen with Ladino. You listen to the word "the last" a lot. The last Sefardí, the last generation, but it's dying from a long time and it's still alive. So who knows? I mean, maybe he will, I don't know the word in English, resucitará y volverá de entre los muertos, I don't know. But what I knew, it's in this language, the Ladino, the Judaismo, it's like a music to me. I don't know how to explain it, but it brings me some smells, some, I don't know, some feelings. I feel connected to it, and also it gives me possibilities to write, but also limits. It's hard to say some things in Ladino because, as you may know, Ladino didn't went through the process other language when in literature. They don't have a romanticismo in Ladino or vanguardias in Ladino. We don't have that. So you can say some things and other things you are not able to talk about them. So this language gives you possibility and limits. And when I started to write, I decided to tell my grandmother's story, because she already has told me the story in Ladino. So it suppose it's going to be easy for me, but it wasn't.
So we know that you write also in Spanish.
I do.
How is for you this process of writing in Spanish and Ladino?
Some poems came to me in Ladino, and some poems came to me in Spanish. That's it. And when I do the translations, because sometimes people ask me when I go to a reading, and I read both versions. I read first in Ladino and then in Spanish, and some people say, why you read both versions? It's not necessary. We can understand the first version. And I really feel that I need to read both versions. And I think my voice is different, my intonation is different, not also the words. It's close, but different. Like poetry. Poetry is made by the same words we use every day, but it's not the same.
Yes, that's true.
You can tell that she's a poet.
And thank you. And we're going to have this opportunity to listen to Denise this afternoon, to listen to Denise reading her poems in Ladino and Spanish, and Sandra is going to read the English translation. So we are going to have the opportunity to listen to your poems. The last question is really an open question, open really to the imagination. So what's going to happen with Ladino? What's the future of Ladino from your own perspective, Rachel?
I will answer that and as best I can. And then I also want to comment a little bit about the limits of Ladino. What will happen is, I like the answer that I think they asked Isaac Bashevis Singer, what is the future of Yiddish? And he said something like Denise said, it's been dying for so long, as I hope it'll take much longer to die. But we hope that it will never die. It is not, as I said, it has disappeared from a daily language. You can't go to any store now and use Ladino for anything. I was asked to record an app, it's called UTalk, for languages, where they teach languages. There's this company in England that specializes in minority languages or languages in distress, let's say. And so I did their Ladino, and they have a set texts that you say the same things in every language, that's the app. And a friend of mine from New York and I went, he was doing the male sound of the recordings for people to listen to, and I was doing the female, and we were laughing at what they were asking us, like how to say I love you in romantic situations, how to order a Coca-Cola, how to call the surfboard. I mean, things that, who is going to use those things in Ladino? There's no occasion where you'll go to a restaurant and order a Coca-Cola in Ladino. There's no place to do that in the world anymore. However, why are so many people coming to our courses in Ladino, writing in Ladino Comunità in my group, even bad Ladino, and they learn because they compare what they sent to what appears, because we have corrected it. There is a future. I mean, these are young people who are learning, and a lot of native Spanish speakers, and a lot from Spain, interestingly enough. There's a big interest. On top of that, there is a tremendous academic interest in the language, and things that I have learned so much about my language since I've been busy with this, that is amazing. I mean, I didn't know there was literature in Ladino. I didn't even know there was the Rashi script versus the regular Hebrew lettering. I don't know if you know that after the expulsion, way back in Spain, our ancestors developed a system of writing Spanish, whatever Spanish language. The standard Spanish today had not developed yet. It had developed after 1492. The first Spanish grammar was in 1492, grammar book in Spain. So there were different languages, and whatever language, whatever it was, Catalan or Castellano or Leonese or whatever that people spoke, they wrote in Hebrew letters. But for Hebrew, from the mundane subjects, that is not religious subjects, they developed a special script, which is a variety, and you write from right to left. They call that soletreo. I learned that now. That's not, my grandfather called it Ladino. But anyway, because like she said, the language had many names. We called it Espanol, but other people called it Judaismo, and the Turks certainly said Yahudice, which means Jewish. So all these things I had to learn, and I learned. And the more I learned, the more I thought, this is a fascinating language. I mean, I fell more in love with it before, when it was just part of, the organic situation. It was nothing. It was just the language we spoke. But now I find it so interesting and so beautiful, and so do other people. So it will live on, maybe, I think, one, in the academic world, for sure, two, in our immense collection of songs and music that we have. And what you hear is like 0.5% of what we have. I mean, what do we have? You have in recordings. In Israel, they have thousands upon thousands of recordings from people who immigrated to Israel with these songs. So it will live in the music, for sure. It will live in academia, and it will live, I think, in people who are aficionados, who like the language for its own sake, and will form groups to continue speaking it among themselves, especially via the internet, but maybe with others. And these people who are new learners are producing literature. It's amazing. The people are writing poetry. Of course, people, not only people like her. In fact, I think she's very, like Denise, she's very rare, I think, from the Sephardic world to come out and use it in poetry. These are people from other backgrounds, including like from Swedish and from Japanese that are learning Ladino. And then go on and if they're poets, they're using Ladino in some poetry that they write. So this kind of thing, I think, will continue because they're very excited about it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Denise, poetry. How do you see the future of Ladino connected with poetry?
As I said before, we really don't know. It's a mystery what is going to happen with Ladino. But I would like to say about, Raquel was talking about Solitreo. And a year ago, I went through the things that my grandmother has left me, and I found a picture. And in the other side of the picture, this strange language. I didn't know which one was. And I started to ask, is this Hebrew? I don't know. Is this Turkish? I don't know. So I put the photograph in the Facebook, and I asked for help. Does everybody know what this is? And they start to say, yes, it is Solitreo. What is Solitreo? Well, Solitreo is what Rachel has explained. And then I say, someone can say what it says, the card. And it appeared a girl from Italy. His name is Alessia. She's a translator, and she has a group with other friends, and they joined to translate things from Solitreo. So she took the photograph to the group, and they started to translate the postcard. And I found out it was a letter that my great-grandmother wrote to his husband. She didn't write because she didn't know how to write. She dictated the word to someone who wrote it. And it was about my grandmother's history. She says there that she wanted to find her husband who left to America because she was growing her child alone, and everybody calls her hijika sin padre, and she suffered and cried in school, and she was trying to get notice from him. So I could hear the voice of my great-grandmother through all these people who helped me to know what she was saying. So if there are no groups like this or people studying, or it would keep close to me, a mystery to me.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much to both of you. Now we have some time for questions for you, the audience. We have the first question here. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Rachel and Denise, for sharing your experience and your expertise. I'm very intrigued by the fact that you're very reverently speaking of the inherent beauty and poeticness of the language of Ladino. So for those who can't be here for the reading, would it be possible to hear a few minutes of conversation between you two in Ladino?
Ok, ven hablaremos un poco.
Mi Ladino es malo. It's a bad Ladino, wrong Ladino.
Amaya, ¿sabes cómo se dice malo en Ladino?
No.
Negro.
Negro, sí.
Negro is bad, and
No,
black.
I'm sorry. You need to speak in Ladino.
Oh,
This is Ladino
No,
time.
let me just, okay, okay, te voy a decir.
Ok,
Okay.
te voy a escuchar.
Negro es malo, y y, ¿cómo se dice? Negro es preto. La color
Es preto.
es
sí.
preto. ¿De dónde viene la palabra de preto,
De
sabes?
portugués.
Y después tú hablaste de cusures.
Cusures, sí.
¿De dónde viene este hierro?
Turco.
Bravo. Ok.
Estoy de nuevo en la escuela.
¿Cómo se dice escuela en ladino?
Escola.
Bravo. Ok. Más cuál hablaremos. Cuando te dicen queja Berjanum, ¿qué quieres decir?
¿Cómo estás? ¿Qué noticias hay? Javier es bueno.
Javier es bueno siempre, inshallah.
Siempre, inshallah.
Inshallah. ¿Qué quieres decir, inshallah?
Como que Dios lo quiera, que así sea.
Sí.
Algo así.
En español hay un verbo que es,
Sí, ojalá, decimos nosotros.
sí. ¿De dónde viene el verbo?
Y es influencia turca porque por Alá.
Allah. Okay, Allah, God willing.
Thank you very much. Is there another question? Another person with a question for our participants?
I have a question. Can you all hear me okay?
Can you go to the microphone, please?
Yeah. Gotcha. Thank you very much. Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. I am wondering, and I don't know if this question can be answered, but are there any traits or characteristics of Ladino that distinguish it from Spanish that you might be able to share with us? You know, like we have here in northern New Mexico, we have Spanglish.
Yeah.
You know, where the English would get integrated somehow. So if you could, I'd be very curious to know what that might be. Thank you.
Yes, I have an article. You can read it if you do academia.edu on the internet, called Understandings and Misunderstandings, the Confounding Differences Between Spanish and Ladino. My Spanish isn't that good. I just know from experience what these are. But let me just briefly say that it's in three groups. One is the phonetics. We have retained the sounds of medieval Iberic languages that have disappeared from Castilian. For example, we have the sound je, like the French jour, for example. We say ijo, ija, ojos.
Ojos. Hoyos, ojos.
We have the sound sh. We have chabón. ¿Cuál lo es? Chabón.
Jabón, para jabón. Con J, sí, jabón.
We have the sound j. Yo soy judía. Él es judío. Now look at the sound difference. We have the j. In other words, the jota has three sounds. It has with us three different sounds. So if you hear a lot of sh, j, or j, those are those all have disappeared into ha in Spanish. Then there is vocabulary, which has disappeared from Castilian, the standard.
Lots of words, lots.
Lots of words that have disappeared from Castilian Spanish. I can't remember, maybe you...
Los acentos, no hay acentos en ladino. Los acentos gráficos, las tildes.
See, that's the writing, that absolutely. We don't have... Now we're writing in Latin letters, and we don't know nothing, like my father-in-law used to say, we don't know nothing about the Spanish rules of accenting, so we don't put them. We just, pretty much what we do is transcribe the soletreo or Rashi script into Latin letters. That's our, except with some variations in that we do use SH, the American SH for the sh sound, for example. Chavon would be. Oh, and then we have a big difference between the B and the V, which disappeared from Castilian. It's vivir and beber, and I forget my examples. I have them all. So there is the vocabulary, the sounds, the writing, then expressions and proverbs and blessings and curses that developed away from Spain. Spain threw us out and wanted nothing to do with us for a long time. And so our language developed on the one side by preserving that old medieval language, and on the other side by taking in the influences of languages wherever we've traveled. That's what makes it so interesting, because our language reflects where we've been, who our neighbors have been, how long we've been in each one, because there's more of these influence than that. We have translated Turkish proverbs into Spanish, into Ladino, that are not known in the Spanish world. So there are a lot of differences. It is much easier, though, for us to, once we know that the ha is one of sh or je, once we know that, we can pretty much understand the Spanish speaker. But if I have texts that some academics are using where somebody wrote on purpose using all these foreign expressions and words from different languages in a little short story to see who understands it. And to Spanish speakers, it sounds like another language.
Yes.
Because you can make a whole thing by using purposefully all these foreign influences and so on.
You also have to be careful. How do you say in English? La falsa transparencia,
Sí.
o cosas que
False
parecen.
cognates.
Cognates.
False cognates.
For
There are
example,
so many.
yeah, when I used to wake up, my mother used to say, amanecites con cara de ojer. And I think ojer is like in Spanish, agujero or agujero, and it sounds like a very bad word in Spanish. So, but ojer is enemy in Hebrew. So it was face, not the agujero, but the enemigo, the bad face, angry. But for the false proximity, I used to think it was, ojer was agujero.
Another word that threw us when we first met, in Dallas, we hear a lot of Spanish. I just read that 36% of the city of Dallas is Spanish speaking. amazing. So there's, you know, it's every day there are people around who speak Spanish. One thing that struck me very early on is the word embarazada. Vosotros
That's a classic.
Preñada. Used for animals, not for people in Spanish.
That's one thing on the Spanish side, that it means pregnant, and it's only used for
Animals.
For animals. But for us, embarazada is la camareta está embarazada, which means it's messy. Or me embarazó mucho que it upset me. So it's totally different. The meanings are totally different. The usage is different. We don't know if we brought that from medieval, probably.
Yes.
Probably we brought that meaning, but the Spaniards changed it. So, in essence, Ladino is a much easier language than Spanish.
No, it's not. It's not.
For a foreigner who doesn't know Spanish, Ladino is easier. First of all, it's what you see is what you get. I mean, there is no Q-U-E for K, and C is sometimes K. You know, if you see a K, it's a K. If you see an S, it's an S. So that's one. But also, our sentences are much simpler. They're shorter. When reading literature in Castilian is a real chore for me. It's very hard. Sentences are so long, and then on top of that, there are words that I don't know, and I have to click and see what it means. It's
the same for me in Ladino.
Anyway, a long answer for a simple question.
Very good answer. Thank you very much, Rachel and Denise, for sharing with us. Thank you.